This talk is called StressTo Success, and you'll see up there it's version 3.5. We're always improving, innovating, kind of like Apple, they're on iOS 11. We're on 3.5 right now, but hopefully in this way, this is going to be a talk, a very practical talk to help you better understand stress, how to deal with it, what it looks like, and to make it a difference in your life for you and your family and teens in positive ways. So my hope, and I'm going to test that at the end, is have you left with something new? And if you haven't, I haven't done my job tonight. So I'm going to test that at the end. But in that way, we're going to start with a quick stress test. So if you look on the board, you should right now be seeing 2 dolphins. And if you're not seeing 2 dolphins, a very interesting thing that Harvard did, this is actually a Harvard photograph, that cortisol in the brain changes what you see. And so all these people might see different things. I've heard wild things about what people see up there. So just know if you see anything but 2 dolphins, this is the right talk for you. This is definitely a good place to be. But if you are seeing 2 dolphins, it might be a good time to leave, because clearly stress is not an issue for you. So also in that way, I'm going to try to make it interactive at times. So we have these great stress balls up here as a reminder of what you'll get from today. So when I ask questions or that, I'll throw them out to you. We'll see how I do. But that will be part of what happens. So in that way, you all got when you walked in. This will be an interactive kind of thing. If you want to open your, what we'll call them notebooks, and what I'm going to ask you to do right now is you'll see there's a list of 5 things, and to write down, and you got some pens, 5 things causing you stress right now. You don't have to share them, you don't have to do anything with them yet, but just kind of think about it yourself. And first off, I want to recognize, or for you to recognize, you all have stress. And you all have things that are causing you stress, and you can identify it without me even talking about it, helping you see it. There is stress. So take a moment, because we're going to use this as we go along, but write down 5 things that are causing you stress overall right now in anything. It could be the holidays are coming up, it could be friendships, it could be the Dodgers tonight, I'll make some references to them. I'm stressing, we want a victory here. So things like that. But just jot down, it could be I haven't talked to my aunt in a while. Whatever pops in your head, take a moment and write down kind of 5 things. So as you did that, and now I want you to think about the fact that you can do that and you all thought of stress and can name it, I want you to think about the function or purpose. Why would anyone and all human beings have it? Have a built-in stress system. And my pictures up there give some allusions to what it might be for, but what do you think the job of stress is? And so this is where a fancy little stress ball is on the line. I'm going to work on my skill. Anyone want to venture out an answer? Why do we have stress? The first thing to understand is that stress is a protective system. A good way to think of it, or different ways, it's like a best friend in your head. A built-in best friend. It's an alarm. It's an alert system. It's trying to protect you and keep you safe. And that's its job, to think about things you care about and then try to get your attention to pay attention to them. And that's its job. So how it does that, and you can think about it, and here's a visual representation of that. It's trying to get your attention over here. Be prepared, think about it. The laser's going everywhere. Be prepared, think about it, and in that way, try to do something about it. But if you don't, it's going to keep reminding you, or if you have too much of it, it starts to, instead of helping you, it starts to inhibit your performance. It starts to get in the way. So what we want to do today, and the goal of today, is to make sure we're moving stress from over this side, where it's fatiguing you, it's inhibiting your performance, and getting it working for you. And so that's the goal of this talk today. So in that way, as I'm talking about, that stress's job is protection. And the way it's going to try to get your attention is by alerting you to things you care about. And if it's going to do its job, it can only do it in one way. And that way is not to tell you how things are going to work out. If it said right now, oh, Thanksgiving's going to be great, everyone's going to love each other, it's going to be a great time, are you going to be worried about Thanksgiving? No. What about the SAT? If it says, oh, don't worry about that, piece of cake, you got it, it's going to go great, are you going to worry about it? No. So how it has to talk to you, the only way our stress system can work is by giving us messages in the most negative, doom or gloom way. It has to say, you're going to fail the SAT. Thanksgiving's going to be a disaster. Your friends hate you. Because if it tells you any other way, you're going to ignore it. So to understand the way stress has to work, it has to tell you in this really negative fashion. So the first thing I want you to understand today is that stress is logical. There's a logical reason we have the thoughts we do in our head. And the thoughts are, I want you to pay attention. And the only way to grab your attention is to present it in this really negative package. So what we have to do is, in that way, I'm going to switch really fast to a metaphor to think about. Good stress management is like being a dam operator of a dam. And think of stress as the water. If stress is the water, and we notice the water level rising, do you think, let's say, playing a video game is going to take away the water out of the dam? If you literally saw the dam level rising, and you're the dam operator, and you're like, oh my God, the dam level's rising, it would be a good time to go play a video game. Will that help? No. What if it's, oh, maybe I should do some yoga? Is that going to help with the water rising? No. So what we're going to talk about is that all the kind of traditional things you might hear about stress management are helpful, but they're not the essential way to get rid of stress. The essential way to get rid of stress is figuring out what the water is about and then figuring out what we're going to do about it. We can't just sit there and let it fester. We can't push the water away because all that's going to do is push the water up, and eventually the dam is going to break. And one way to think about depression is we have too much water and we don't know how to get it out, such that it breaks our ability to cope. So in that way, your job as the dam operator, and what we're going to talk about today, is figuring out what is the water going on in you, and then what am I going to do about it? And why I like to use the metaphor of a dam and being a dam operator is if you ever look at a dam, it actually has two ways to get the water out. So the first way is down below, it has these auxiliary valves, which we'll talk about. And those are the things that are always kind of open, helping to take some of the pressure out, helping to relieve the water so anything can be manageable. And that's a good way to think of your traditional stress management, which we'll talk about, which is exercise, diet, sleep. And we're going to go into all of them later, what are good auxiliary valves, but we want to help have the pressure out. But the big thing of dealing with stress is then if the water's rising, they have these big, and you can see them over here, they have the floodgates. And the main floodgates are for that purpose of dealing with the water. And so what we want to do is learn how to better access those floodgates. We spend a lot of our energy down below, but it's not enough when we're dealing with all the water you have to deal with in high school. You got a lot on your plate. And parents too, you have a lot trying to help your teens. So we have to learn better ways to deal with the main valves. So what does that look like to deal with the main valves? The first job is to listen to what your stress system is telling you. It's so important not to try. People might say, oh, just block out your stress. Don't pay attention to it. It's the worst idea you could do. Because think about this. If I'm trying to get you to pay attention to something, if I care about you, if I'm a good friend, and I really want you to pay attention and do well on the SAT, let's say, and you're trying to say, oh, I'm not going to think about it, that's not going to get me to stop. That's going to get me to think you're not paying attention to me, and I have to up the ante. I got to add more. I got to shock you even more. And that's where a lot of those heart palpitations and physical symptoms and panic comes in, when we're not paying attention to our stress system. It will try to get your attention. And if you don't listen, it's going to try harder. It doesn't go away. And so the first thing we got to do is listen to the message. And then what we have to do is unpackage what the message is about from the way the message is given. So again, to give you some examples, and we're going to practice in a minute. If my stress system tells me the Dodgers are going to lose tonight, so in that way, it's presenting something I care about, but in the worst package. So what I have to do is say, I hear you stress, telling me I care about the results of the Dodger game. I care about what happens. Or if it's said in that way, the chemistry test tomorrow, you're going to fail. I hear you stress system that you care about the chemistry test, that you want me to do well. So we need to hear the message, but uncouple the package that it's coming in. Does this make sense? Give me some nods if okay? So in that way, I want you to turn to someone next to you, and here's your challenge, to look at the top three first, if you're here with your parent, and try to figure out what is the message from the way the message is being presented, and then share with someone next to you one thing that's causing you stress right now overall. So either one thing you wrote down or another, and try to get at the heart of the message. So I used to grow up with Saturday Night Live, and there was a skit where the woman would say, talk amongst yourselves. So this is your turn. Talk amongst yourselves. 3 minutes. Go. Anyone up to trying to unpack the message from number one? I will give a horrible presentation. So that's how my anxiety or stress is presenting it. What's the underlying message? I care about this presentation. I want it to go well. Thank you very much. Now, a little bit braver, anyone willing to share one of their own personal stresses in this room? One thing that's causing them some stress overall in their life right now. Go for it. Yeah.
The political situation.
The political climate causing some stress right now. And in that way, I kind of call it, what is your stress system? How is it presenting it to you? Such as the world's going to pot, we're not going to, how is it kind of saying it to you? I can't believe what's going on. That's great. And one more. Thank you for being brave. But the first one I hear is just, I care about my relationship with my kids, and I don't want to mess it up. The second then is, what do I do about it, which we're going to get to. But thank you very much, and we can keep talking about this too. In that way, really great job. But the first thing I really want you to hear, and you're getting it, we got to tune in and not tune out. So much of our culture today is teaching us how to tune out from our stress, forget about it. We have to tune into it. It is the key. It wants to help you. Let it help you. So the first way to do that is to listen, to be a good listener to your own stress system. Then comes step 2, which is then we got to categorize the stress we're having in our head. And the way we're going to categorize it is along these 3 dimensions. Is it something fixable that I can do something about? That's a fixable stress. So, for example, if I'm worried that my tire level pressure is low, can I fix that problem? Yes. Versus something I can't fix, which is a U. So we're going to call fixable issues Fs. Unfixable are U's. These are things that are not easily fixable or that weigh me down and I can't necessarily just fix. We as human beings and parents especially love to fix, but some things we just can't fix. And those are unfixable issues. And if your teen, whoever sees the issue, if they see it as unfixable, even if you see it as fixable, it's unfixable. So that's an important thing. And then the last we're going to try to determine, or is my stress system, again, working so well that it's overreacting? I call this spidey sense. Is it worried about things way too far in the future that I don't have to worry about necessarily in this moment? So an example might that be, will I be a millionaire in 25 years? If I'm in high school right now, I don't necessarily, that might be a little bit of an overreaction for being in high school to worry where you're going to be 25 years from now. So we'll talk about it, but the first thing we want to do is categorize our stresses as fixable, unfixable, or overreactions. So now what I would like you to do is go back to your original 5, and you're going to see a column there that says U, F, or O. And look at your own stresses right now that you wrote and decide, is this something I can do something about? Is this something I can't, that's unfixable? Or is it that my stress is overreacting to what it needs to at this time? So back when I was over at Children's Hospital, we'd have a lot of parents who want to jump to kind of, in this intensive outpatient program I was working with, there was a lot of parents who wanted to jump to problem solving. And what they would find is, oh, I have the right solution. This will make it so easy. And the teen would say no. They would reject it. And a lot of that at times is because it came from you. And they might not be ready to hear it or want to hear it from a parent. And so we have to work with them at learning to help them see how it might be fixable rather than making it fixable for them. So we'll talk about that. But in that way, if it starts off feeling unfixable to them, that's a better place to start than going, oh, we can fix this and this is how. It can be a little bit of a combination, and it's good to see that. Yeah, great point. Yeah, it can be. But start in that way to recognize for you what categories, and we're going to do different things based on the category. So now that you did that, what do we do now that we have these categories? And what we're going to, I actually have a little one. So again, talk amongst yourselves, look at these 5, and decide what they are. Are they fixable, unfixable, or overreactions? Again, it can be open for interpretation and debate, and I'd be happy to do that with you. But based on my observation, I would say number 1, fixable. Number 2, an overreaction. Number 3, fixable. You could talk with your teacher. You could talk with students. You could do stuff to try to help you feel more prepared and ready for that math test. Number 4, that's unfixable. Number 5, an overreaction, fixable, but probably an overreaction. We're kind of in fall right now, worried about what we're having for breakfast this summer, probably overreacting a little bit. So that's how I kind of see that. But again, you might see it differently, and I'm happy for you to see it. And I'm not going to spend time arguing or debating. And no, if that's how you see it, it's important that that's how you see it. And we go from there. So in that way, now step 3 is now that we've classified it, what do we do with the different classifications? So the first thing is what we do. Well, we can see up there with fixable, we're going to do something about it. We got to start to address it. With unfixable issues, we don't just let it sit in our dam. We have to release it and get support for it. And with overreactions, we're going to learn what I call verbal judo, or I don't call it, Dr. David Burns calls it, this guy who wrote a great book. But we're going to learn to debate it and not let it be the answer. So what that will look like is with fixable issues, I gave you some examples in your handouts you can look. What really helps are action plans. Are building in some plans, how am I going to get this done? And sometimes action plans, again, are I know how to do this and I just need to set up the time and make it happen. Sometimes, a lot of times we avoid things is because we don't know how to do them. So part of, even though I know it's fixable, but let's say it's I got to get the oil changed. And maybe for everyone that seems like, oh, that's easy. But for a teenager who's never done it before, that might be something you might expect, but they might not know how to do. So sometimes it's recognizing that it's fixable, but I don't know how to do it. Or it's a 20-page paper, or it's a research paper. So I know I need to write it, and I know if I write it, I'll feel better, but I really don't know how to write it. So if that's the case, then we have to figure out as part of the action plan, who's walked this pathway before? Who's written paper before? Who can help me get this done so it's not stressing me out and my alert system is going off because I really care about it? Who can help me with that? Another thing that really helps when we're trying to do things and accomplish fixable things is accountability, is finding a buddy whose opinion you care about and telling them what your goal is, what you want to accomplish. I want to write that paper. And I recommend for students, again, if you're a procrastinator, and we can talk about that too, a whole thing, but if you're a procrastinator and you're going to wait till the last minute to write a paper that you're stressed out about, building accountability by changing the deadline. Tell your teacher, can I turn it in a week early for a review? You're going to still wait till the last moment, but the last moment now is a week before. So then you write the paper, and then you have a week to revise. So building in that accountability always helps when we're trying to achieve actionable goals. Working from an action plan or getting help when we really don't know how and recognizing that's why we're avoiding because we don't know how to do it. Or a big thing is because we all get so busy, and we'll talk about this more, planning and organization really helps get stuff done. Crossing things off the stress system is building in time for when am I going to get this done? When am I going to get this workout done? When am I going to call grandma? When am I going to apply for college? When am I going to talk to my parents? When am I going to get to lacrosse? Putting it all on a schedule and seeing how it's possible is really good. One other thing that helps with doing that's not on there that I need to add as my brain's working is learning how to break things down. So I call that baby steps. But sometimes when things feel really large, it overwhelms our stress system, and then we start to avoid. So learning in that way, there was a movie, a reference for maybe parents in the room, teens not. I don't know if you ever saw What About Bob? And there is a psychiatrist in there who wrote a book called Baby Steps, and learning to break everything down to small steps that seem doable. So rather than writing a 40-page paper, what's step one? I got to come up with a topic. I can do that. I can come up with a topic. Then what's step two? I have to get 5 references. I can do that. So rather than thinking big, breaking it down small helps us do actionable things. Any questions about that? Okay. Number 2, unfixable issues. We still have to get it out of our dam. So we have to find healthy ways to get emotions out. So a lot of people were interpersonal in nature is being able to share it to another human being. That's what makes counseling effective. Talking it out is a really good way to get the water out of the dam. Another great way is journaling. Another great way that I talk to teens especially about is putting it into something creative, putting it into your art, putting it into your music, putting it into a workout. So rather than, again, working out where you're tuning everything out or listening to music to get away from the world, using it as a vehicle to release is really important. And so part of that is learning another piece of when we want to be effective at releasing. And I'm going to give you something I wish I learned when I was younger that I didn't, is that everyone wants to be helpful, but they don't know how. They really do. No one I don't know ever wakes up in the morning and says, how do I make someone miserable today? I haven't heard that yet. You might think so. You might think my teacher's out to get me. But I promise you, they don't wake up in the morning thinking about how do I make you miserable today. They want to help, but they don't know how. So part of learning how to release is understanding that it's your job and that you can let people know up front what you need. I'm having a rough day. I need to vent about it for 5 minutes, and then I want to go watch the Dodger game. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to share. We're going to keep with that Dodger theme, by the way. Well, it's going to be a running theme throughout. But in that way, or it could be, I need to talk about it. My friend really upset me. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I just want to share, and then I need a hug. But it's on you to give the roadmap. And parents, if you want to be helpful, learn instead of giving what you think they need, learn to ask. I hear you're upset right now. What would be helpful for you? And if they don't know, because a lot of teens don't know, is say, this is what I'm thinking that might be helpful for me. Do you think that could work? And really try to put yourself in their shoes. They might want a break. They might want to not think about it. They might want to cry. They might just need a hug. So learning to figure that out. So what I've developed, I call it the advocacy formula. So in that way, it's when I'm dealing with something, learning how to share this with a professor or a teacher or a parent or a friend. And what it looks like is the 3. I am dealing with whatever that is. I'm dealing with college stress. How that's showing up right now is I can't think straight. I can't focus in class. And this can be to a teacher. How you can help support me is when you see me kind of daydreaming, just check in and see how I'm doing. Or it could be to a parent. I'm dealing with a breakup. How this is showing up, I'm crying, I can't sleep, I'm really upset. How you can help me is just being a little extra kind, is maybe get me out of here for a little bit, or let's talk about this, or whatever it is. But learning to advocate for yourself is a really important skill with the unfixable issues in life. It's so important that what I would love to do is turn it away from an idea to a practice. So just try it really fast, and there's 2 things I'm going to ask you to do this time. To think about, as you're building your own support team, who that might be. Who would be on your team to release to? And if you can't think of anyone, that's actually one of your jobs from tonight. You got to build your own team. And in that way, who's on the team? And then you got to recruit them or advocate what that team might look like or what you need from that teammate. So what I'd love for you to do is turn to your partner, share one thing who's on your team, but then practice doing this out loud. Share one thing you're dealing with, how that might show up in the context of your relationship with that person or overall, and what you might need. And just see, it's 3 sentences, and it can make such a difference. Such a difference that I'm going to ask you to do it right now. Now, in that way, we have what we do with fixable, we have what we do with unfixable, but what do we do with the overreactions? And what we want to do is learn to talk back to our stress system. We got to give it some perspective. And so there's different ways to give it perspective, and you can do whatever works, but I'm going to show you some things that I've learned and teach that help give it some perspective. So the first one, I call a 10. And what that means is our alarm system, like an alarm, is going to go off at full blast. That's what it's supposed to do. And that's a 10. I now want to give you a new metric, which to rate your alarm. A 10 is a life or death issue. If it's life or death and imminent, that's a 10, and your stress system should freak out, and you should figure out how to get out of there. But if that's a 10, then giving it some perspective on what is this issue in front of me? What is getting into college on a life or death scale? It might feel like life or death, but it's not. It still could be high, but saying, stress, you can give it a name, I encourage you. Barney, stress, my enemy, my friend, whatever you want. This is a 6. You're reacting like this is a 10. You're not helping me at a 10. You need to calm down. We can do something. We can manage this. You don't need to worry right now. The next one is, I call this, this comes from the Trix Bunny Rabbit. Any of you remember or have seen the Trix Bunny Rabbit commercial? Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. And in that commercial, the way it worked is there is these kids eating this awesome Trix cereal, or maybe not so awesome, depends on how you look at it. But they were eating the cereal, and there was a bunny rabbit always trying to take the kids' cereal. And every commercial, it never worked because the kids knew the rabbit was coming. They didn't know how the rabbit was going to show up that day, but they knew the rabbit was coming. And what they would do is be on the lookout, and they would catch it. So in the same way, you can do that with stress. You can be on the lookout for how it might show up in your life. There you go, stress, making me think I'm going to fail. I know your trick. It's not going to work this time. There you go, stress, making my throat close up. That used to get me not to go to school. I'm not going to let that trick work this time and keep me from doing what I need to do. You're not having that power. And simply by naming what it tries to do, it takes away its power. So that's another way to give it perspective. There you go, overreacting. I don't need to worry about this right now. The third is what I call mission in life. And that is, in that way, telling our stress system, there's some things that are worth being stressed about it because I really care about it. So, for example, I really want to get into Stanford. So I know this is causing me really a lot of stress, taking 4 or 5 APs or whatever you might need to do these days to get into Stanford. But that stress is important to me, and I'm going to deal with it because that's the mission I want to achieve. And so I know this is hard, but I stress, I'm going to do it and take this on because I care about this so much. So in a way, I'll share with you how my stress system uses this, and I use this one a lot. My stress system always presents the idea that I'm going to blow up on an airplane. And so why fly? Don't get on an airplane. And I say it a lot. My mission is to see the world. My mission is to visit family, to be in other cultures. My mission is to not let you win stress and beat me. So I'm getting on that plane. And I know the next couple hours might suck, but you're not going to stop me. I'm doing this. And so that's another way to kind of talk back to a hyper-alert stress system. The last one is what I'm going to give you today. There's a bunch more, but I call it A to Z. So when our stress system jumps, and if you think about kind of on a permutation, so imagine you're seeing someone really cute, you want to go up to them and try to get their number, and your stress system again is going to present you the worst case scenario. They're going to make a fool of you, they're going to reject you, or it might say, you know what? You know, in 25 years, if you see this person, they have a tattoo, your parents are going to hate the tattoo, it's not going to work out because of that, so don't go up to them now. How you can challenge that is, I'm jumping to a conclusion way down the line. I can only worry about 3 steps ahead. That's as far stress I'm going to let you worry. So in that way, if you think about a potential dating scenario, how far might be 3 steps ahead when you first see a person at Starbucks you want to approach? What would 3 steps ahead probably be? Well, in my mind, 3 steps ahead might be, what is a first date going to look like? That's as far as I'm going to let myself worry about how all this is going to go. And so anxiety, stress, you're overreacting. I'm going to worry. That's as far as I'm going to let myself worry. So right now, if you're applying to colleges, if you're a senior in here, what would be 3 steps ahead in that sense? Writing your essay. That would be, again, yeah, about 2 or 3 steps, or making sure I get all my applications in. That's as far as to let yourself worry. Not about which is the perfect right college and am I going to get financial aid or all that. They're all important, but they're too far ahead. There's too much that can happen in between. So it's a good way to challenge your stress is, what letter is this? And I only can worry about 3 steps ahead. So again, now you have this big picture of the dam, and you have in that way what we want to do is you want to categorize it in doing that stuff. And then as I alluded to before, that's the big top system, and that's the one I want you to care about more. But at the same time, we have the auxiliary system. And it's also helpful, especially as we're entering this time of year. This is what I call the equivalent of psychological cold and flu season. Because in that way, we're entering cold and flu season, and so you might take some extra vitamins, you might wash your hands more, get extra sleep. But again, we're shifting less daylight. We're literally going to turn back the clock and have less sunshine. That's not good for mental health. At the same time, it's getting colder, so we're not out as much. And so that's not good for mental health. And the third is the holidays. I don't care who you are or how great they are, they're stressful. So we're increasing stress and decreasing all these outside factors that make it easier to deal with. That's kind of a perfect storm, and that's what we do in our line of work. See a lot more anxiety, depression, stress kind of peak up around this period. So focusing on these things really helps, such that I'm going to ask you to commit to one, to your partner, what you can do for the next month to keep the water from rising. So that can be yoga, that can be meditation, that can be eating healthier, sleep, exercise, really working on connecting with people, doing things you love to do, doing things that you're good at, music, engaging in calming and release activities. So think about what you're willing to put some personal accountability to, turn to that partner next to you, and share, what am I going to commit to do the next month to make sure my stress does not rise? Is anyone willing to share one out loud? Make everyone in this room accountable. Whenever you see them, they can remind you, hey, how's that blank going? Yes. Connecting with people, that would be fantastic. Here it comes. Oh. Yes. Journaling is one of the best activities you can do. Worth your time. Thank you. Yes. Getting good sleep. So preventative and helpful. Good catch. One more. Yeah. Exercise. Fantastic, sir. Awesome. So in that way, now you have the makings of what a good stress system should be. And now I want to give a few extra tips for awesome stress management. So the first thing to do is to recognize a lot of times we're reactive to stress. But the first thing to understand is that there's 6 areas of every person's life. And so there's our family, there's our social relationships, there's our work, there's ourself as learner, There's our physical, emotional, and identity-related self. And then there's family. But then there's the other things that don't fit, and I call that the miscellaneous category. And a lot of time what we do, which is not great, is we only get caught up and do good stress management in one area of our life. Meaning, let's say at school, you get really caught up in making sure you're aware of your deadlines, you're studying for tests, and you neglect these other areas. And that's kind of a dangerous thing to do, in the same way that if you're a cactus and you're relying on the sun, if there's a cloudy day, you get into trouble. So making sure you're kind of doing it in all areas is really good, and moving from being reactive to getting proactive. So how you make that switch is every day you sit down for 5 minutes and you let yourself and you tune into your stress system and you say, what is stressing me out in these different areas? What's stressing me out about family right now? Oh, my grandma, I haven't talked to her. My dad, we're not doing along so well. Or whoever's coming in for the holidays. Tuning into your social stress. What's going on there? I haven't connected to my best friend for a while. I, haven't had a girls' night out in a while. Whatever those things are. And to learn to think ahead and jot them down. So literally in the next sheet, after you see the domains, there's where you can do this and write things down. Another area of the self. I haven't been working out so much. I'm not connected to my faith. I'm not connected to my ethnicity. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. Okay, that's stressing me out. It goes on the list. And learning, instead of having things creep up on you, you should be ahead of it and taking care of it. And that's how you do it, 5 minutes a day. Not right before bed. And the first time you do it, it's pretty activating to think about all the stress that's going on. But eventually, it feels really good because you're ahead of things, you're knocking things off, you're taking care of business. And that's a way to help see it and not get caught up in only focusing on one area. So, for example, when I used to work, I worked with high-performing athletes. This would happen a lot. They would get so good at focusing on one area that if anything happened bad in that area, they were in a lot of trouble because that was such a part of all they focused on. So learning in that way to really think about your whole self and looking at what could be stressful and taking it off the list is a really good switch. You don't want to be surprised anymore. You don't want things to crop up that you didn't know about, deadlines you forgot. And the way to do that is to slow down and do this. I'm a big fan too, if you work, to do this in meetings. Again, you can listen, but also in that way make it productive for yourself in finding natural pockets to kind of do that in. The next thing then, as we start to do this, you might start recognizing I have more things to do than time. I have too much stress and not enough time to deal with it. So now I want to help you figure out how do I organize how I take care of business and whatever that business is. So in that way, I want you to think of 2 dimensions. The first dimension I call priority. Priority is how much do you care about that? How important to you is it in your life? So for example, if working out is a high priority or taking care of myself physically, then it's an 8, 9, or 10. If it's a low priority, I don't care too much about it, a 1, 2, or 3, or anywhere in between. So with each stress you have, you're going to start assigning a number to it in terms of priority. The other category is deadline. How quick is something due? So for example, paying the cable bill might not be a priority in my life, but if it's due tomorrow and they're going to turn it off and my kids are going to be upset with me, it's high deadline. So in that way, things that have quick deadlines, like turning in a college application that's due tomorrow, high deadline. Chemistry test tomorrow, high deadline. Something due in a month, lower deadline. So if you start to do this, and that's where on the sheet are the 5 stresses, now look and look at each of those and decide your deadline and your priority. So there's a column for deadline and there's a column for priority. And then what we want to do, the order of operations, and this is something people do naturally, is things that are high priority, high deadline, we move to the bottom of the list. It's interesting, but the things we care about that cause us the most stress, we avoid and do last. I have to clean my house before I study for the SAT. I have to have my room organized before I do this. We tend to fill our stress, again, it's causing me a little stress that my house is not tidy, but in terms of deadline or priority, not so much. So we have to learn to go after the things causing us the most stress, the big water items, first, not last. But we do tend to put them at the bottom, and we want to stop doing that. So look at your list, make your decisions, and that's the order you want to go. Another stress tip, besides getting preventative instead of reactive, besides figuring out how to take care, the other thing is to learn to catch it early. Again, listening to it helps you catch it. Know your early signs. And it's much easier to deal with something, and think about it in terms of thirst. It's much easier when you're a little thirsty and you open the fridge and there's water, Gatorade, vodka, soda, everything you can imagine to grab the healthiest option than when you're so thirsty, you've just ran a marathon and you have no water in you, you're going to grab whatever you see quickest. And so learning to catch things early and know the signs from thoughts. The first time you have that thought, that stress thought, I'm not doing well, I'm going to fail, catch it early and do something. Don't wait till it's growing and that's all you can see in your head. Other feelings that we say with stress, overwhelmed, anxious, irritable, catching those early signs. If we're starting to avoid, learn in that way. What are your stress signs? Am I surfing Facebook a little more? Is Spider Solitaire my go-to? Is Netflix my go-to? Whatever that is, catch it early. Notice when you're starting to fall in that pattern and don't let yourself. Hear your stress and take care of what it's trying to get you to avoid. Last thing, as I said already, don't make this a once-a-week thing, a once-a-year thing. This is like eating. Make it a daily thing. To tune in, to figure it out and do something about it. At the same time, the nice thing about stress and anxiety is we can anticipate it. So for example, if you really are stressed out about finals or taking tests, I kind of gave that one away, but when can you anticipate it being more of a stressful time of year? Finals time. So we can anticipate that. Let's say you're really stressed, your in-laws make you really stressed, or your friends. You can anticipate when that might be. The summer might be more stressful, or holiday time, because they're coming. We can learn to anticipate it and then do stuff now to minimize that. We could start, if we're really worried about tests, we can start studying now so that when we get to that period, we're better able to manage it. We could start figuring out our in-law plan or a family plan or dealing with whatever plan and not waiting. Another big thing I talk about is it's very interesting, human nature, we do two things. The first thing I'll talk about is when we're stressed, we say, I don't have time to do good stress management. And I'll just repeat that and think about this. I'm so stressed, I don't have time to do the things that help me with my stress. That's what we want to do opposite. When we're under stress, we want to double down on the things that help us with stress, not the other way around. And a way to help yourself do that is move away from the concept of time from amount to efficiency. What's going to make me more efficient with my time? So for example, If I pull an all-nighter to study for a test, yes, I have more time. But because I pull an all-nighter, how efficient is my studying going to be? How efficient am I going to be on the test if I pull an all-nighter? Might it be better to get 3 or 4 hours sleep, and you might have less time to study, but how much more will your brain be able to handle with that? Or if I get a good workout, or I get some stress out, instead when I'm studying, I'm not thinking about all I'm stressed about because I've dealt with that. Now I can be more efficient with my studying. So really moving away from amount to what's going to make me efficient. And now in that way, I do hope, and we'll talk, that you've heard some new things today that maybe you never heard your whole life. So if you're a parent and you're in this room without your teen, imagine they don't have this either. They don't know this stuff. So how am I as a family, what are we going to do to make stress and talking about stress and dealing with it more part of our family system? So the first thing to think about, am I going to teach them about the dam? Am I going to teach them about this stuff? Can they watch the talk online? Can I reward them and say, if you watch it, I'll give you, depending on your family situation, it can range from an app to a car. I don't know your family situation. Whatever it might be. But in that way, what can I do to get you to embrace this and teach you about it? And then how do we make it part of our family culture? Are we talking about our stress? Do we know each other's stress level? Can you walk into a room or not in a conversation and know that your son is at an 8 on a stress scale from 1 to 10, you're at a 2, dad's at a 4? Are we aware of what the stress level is at and what the stress is about? Are we talking about it? And in that way, I always talk, a big fan of Harry Potter. And so in that way, if you've ever seen or watched or anything about Harry Potter, he's the main character, and there's this villain called Voldemort. And it's very interesting how everyone with Voldemort was so afraid of him, and they would never talk about him. It was the dirty secret, and they would call him he who can't be named, or he who must not be named. And there were only 2 people in the whole story who never said that. They called him by his name, Voldemort. Stress is not scary. We all have it. We need to learn to call it out, to talk about it, to take away the power of the secrecy. And so I encourage you to also talk about Voldemort at home. It's not he who can't be named. And so with that in mind, if you're here with a family, decide, what are we going to do as a family structurally? Are we going to sit down on Sundays? Are we going to have one meal where we sit and talk about our stresses? Are we going to come up with plans? What are we going to do differently? Are we all going to do a yoga session every week to get the water down? Are we going to exercise? What do we want to commit to either deal with the lower or upper portion of the dam and decide? And if they're not in the room, parents who don't have a teen in the room or haven't thought about it, think about, how am I going to have this conversation when I get home? What are some of the things I might ask for? How am I going to present it? But we need to start doing things differently. So take a minute and go for it. Learning to have that conversation. And again, it's very interesting what happens when we realize how much we're on different pages in what we perceive and then how we react to it. And it also helps too in relationships, because sometimes if someone's grumpy or irritable, we personalize it and think they're grumpy or irritable at me. But when we start to realize that, they're just stressed, or they got all this on the plate, it helps to make it from, I want to avoid you, to how do I help you? So I love in that way, and I hope you keep these conversations going. And then one more thing to recognize, and that's why we're here too, is sometimes we don't know how to deal with our dams, or our dams are just too much and we need some extra help. And that's where the Depression Center comes in, We have a wide range of programs and things to help all ages deal with their dams. And that's another way to think about therapy. It's a place where I go in and I stop with the busyness of my life and everything that's going on, and I slow down and deal with my water. And again, in doing so, it makes you so much more efficient in all aspects of your life. Having that space with another person who cares about you and you care about what they think, that you're working on your dam. And again, that's the horrible thing about the media and TV. They give therapists a horrible rap. We're either trying to murder you or manipulate you or making you sit on a couch and look up and share dreams. It's not that way. It's kind of like what we're doing here. We're talking, you're learning some things, and we're figuring it out together. And so if your dam ever gets stuck as a family, as an individual, start to think about that as an option to help unstink on something yourself. I can't figure out the right verb for that. So in that way, and then the last thing, as I said, I always want to feel like I made a difference. And so what I'd love to hear, I kind of call it the stoplight, and we're going to end after this and answer questions. But I'd love to hear, based on today, if someone can share one thing they're going to stop doing. So I call that a red light. A yellow light is based on today, one thing they're going to keep doing. I'm really glad I'm doing this. And yeah, someone says it's a good idea. I'm going to keep doing it. And a green light is something I'm going to add to my life based on today. And again, as I said, I'm barricading the doors and we might be stuck here all night. We'd love one person to share a red light right now. Someone who could share one red light. Yes. Well, you all have been a great audience. I'm going to open it up to questions in 1 second if you want to leave. But I do want to first end with a thank you to the Depression Center and the Solich the parent group for putting this on, and the Kathy and Brad Kors Foundation for helping make this possible. And for you, there's a lot of people behind the scenes who made today happen. And I'm really glad to just be in front of a great audience like yourself. So thank you very much. And again, I'm going to open it up for questions in 1 second. So thank you.